need to evolve a bit. We need to have, before we put restrictions and governance around, and not that we shouldn't have governance maybe around cryptocurrency and what have you, but the technology itself, and it's very broad. It's way beyond just, its applications are way beyond just another currency. So I feel that it's, to the point we were making earlier, that it's, we're coming from a place of fear. We think, we're afraid of how big the plant is going to get, so we're just going to snip it from before it even flourishes. So those are some issues I had with why are we talking governance, but what I would have rather talked about, what can we learn from distributed ledger technologies, and how could we use that to disrupt the way we do governance? How can we establish trust in this trustless society? Because if we think we're living in where we don't trust the cryptocurrencies or cryptographers or distributed ledger, well, the fact of the matter is trust is a fallacy. Trust is an assumption. I assume you're going to behave in a certain way, and that's why we have lawyers, so we can document what we say and sign off, and that's it. So we don't have trust. We live in a trustless world, and it's a shame. And I think that's driven because we are founded on fear rather than on love. And we're more consumed with value extraction rather than value creation. If we just stop and think about how can I create value and how I can distribute the value, a lot more value will come back. So a smaller piece of a much larger pie is much more interesting to me than the whole of a tiny little pie that you can't even see.
We've got two sides of this model, which is the first one is the simplest to understand, which is how do we govern around blockchain itself. And the reality is it's too early to even work out what we should be governing, because it's innovation and creativity. So we've got to work out some practices around it. Then having done one set of practices, we'll get bespoke practices where individuals can share them. We can then come up with good practices and get them as guides, then we get the best practices. But that's going to take 10 years. So let's not try and jump to best practice before we've actually learned how to do the very basic things. And maybe an analogy of that is, if you imagine a boat, and what I'm going to ask you to do is take a cup full of water, and I want you to walk round the boat, okay, with this cup full of water and not spill any. Okay, if the boat is in the harbour, okay, it's really easy to go and do. And that's like an industry that's been around for a very long time. It's very stable, it's very mature, and walking around with your cup full of water and not spilling any is really simple. Now we send the boat out into the South Pacific in a force 9 gale and ask you to walk around with the same cup, and it's flipping hard. And that's where blockchain and distributed ledger technology is today. It's going up and down like a yo-yo, and so trying to put governance around it is a bit mad. The other side of it, which I think is really interesting, is there are mature industries. And accounting could be one where we're sitting today, and it's how do we take the blockchain technology and the distributed ledger technology and apply that to actually solving governance issues. So we know what the governance rules are, but we can make them more transparent, we can make them more votable, we can solve so many of the biases in existing governance structures by using it. That solves a real problem. That's really exciting. We should be working on our own dog food and eating it and helping ourselves as an industry, but then taking the best of other industries and helping them to marginally improve, because that provides more efficiency, more effectiveness, more transparency, more openness to all the things that we really, really want as society.
Maybe take a look at what has worked and what doesn't work, and see how we can bring that into the distributed ledger world, and what we can bring from that world to fix some of the existing problems, because all of the governance models of today are not necessarily perfect. But we do need to keep in mind transparency, openness, interoperability, and those principles that must start coming into our thinking if we are going to have a real conversation about trust.
So we've built a model which starts off with governance because we understand it. We've added to it open source ideologies which provide some of those transparencies. But on the bottom of it, we'd now like to go governance plus, which is adding stewardship. And the way to think of stewardship is very much more like parenthood. So as a parent, you don't just tell your child about how to dress and how to clean their teeth and how to eat. You actually grow them over a long period of time. You teach them rules and morals and governances. And you teach them lots of different things and actually how to be a rounded individual. And that's what we mean by stewardship. So it's about governance plus some of the best things it brings. But actually, how do we actually bring the best things together, which are best for humanity.